there's not much I can't say about this man. He, in 2009, realized that Sydney needed something. Sydney needed something to build up startups and help them grow and help them get inspired. And so Pete took it upon himself to start something just like today, just a little bit smaller, that really could serve the community and help them connect, get inspired, learn something. And what he has grown this conference to in the past 5 years has been nothing short of amazing. Pete Cooper is also the founder of the Start Society, iCentral, which is his accelerator, and he is just a huge advocate for the startup community. So let's give another big round of applause for Pete Cooper.
Thank you, that's very kind. Now, I don't know if anyone's already said this today, but I'm going to do it again because it's a tradition. Any startups in the room? Yeah, come on! So you're part of a special family now. This is the standard thing where we need to take a moment to recognise. You're part of the tech startup ecosystem in Australia. And it's one of the most hyper-connected communities in Australia. It's one of the fastest growing. It's certainly one of the most influential. Did anyone notice we have a new Prime Minister? It's kind of weird being up here because the last time I was up here it was the, I don't usually speak with notes, but I've been told I ramble so much I've got notes today, so excuse me. It's kind of weird being up here because the last time I was up here was sometime around early high school, and our kind teachers that were encouraging us to think globally had us stand on stage and sing such wonderful songs from the Sound of Music era, and thinking about Europe and post-war and America. So their idea of culture from America was Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. Yeah, you can match how much we love that, right? So I prefer to be out the back. I hate running events, and I hate running co-working spaces. But the benefits to the community of people meeting face-to-face, talking, sharing stories, learning what skills are available to them is actually incredible. Now, for those of you that aren't into history, I get told off for this a lot. In 1999, a professor who's now has been with Harvard, Clayton Christensen. Who's heard of Clayton Christensen? Yeah, good. So, but surprisingly, still only about a third of the audience, right? Wrote a book called The Innovator's Dilemma. Buy the book if you want to give him some commission, and people hear me say this, and I'll say that a lot today, but read the Wikipedia page around disruptive innovation. So he coined that term 15 years ago, and I think it's fair to say we're 15 years into the biggest wealth creation and social impact wave hitting humanity ever, driven by internet and mobile. And he predicted it. It's what iTunes has done to the music industry. It's what Google Docs has done to Microsoft Office, and what hopefully every one of you globally focused product-oriented startups, scalable startups will do in your chosen segment. Mick Lebinskas is on next, and he's going to talk about exactly that, focus and going global. So how big is this opportunity and how weird is it? It's $3 to $4 billion. $3 to $4 trillion. It's so easy to drop 3 zeros. $3 to $4 trillion created in value in internet mobile tech. That's including the listed and unlisted companies. And just to put it in a different perspective, Russell Brand, the crazy, quirky English comedian, said to me the other day, along with 6,000 other people at the entertainment centre, the top 80 to 100 people. Now, even if these numbers are an order of magnitude out or 2 orders of magnitude out, they're still scary. So just just have a think about this. Top 80 to 100 people, in terms of wealth, have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 3 to 4 billion people. Okay? And that pyramid, that sort of inequality, has been historically getting worse. Getting more concentrated at the top and worse at the bottom. And I think it's fair to say that information and equal access to information enabled by the internet and mobile is gradually one of the first times in the history of humanity that we can change that. And that's actually one of the great motives for me. It's not just about the wealth creation, it's also about the social impact. And I hope you'll think about that, because it's an enduring aspect you can build into your startup. I didn't realise that was up there already. I'm Pete. I basically just try to be a bit of an advocate and wander around doing things that haven't been done yet in the ecosystem. I came back to Australia in 2005 from living overseas, which I really loved, and travelling. And I was stunned how bad it was here compared to the progress being made in other countries. And I don't know if you remember that time, but there were people wandering around talking about startups from 1998 that had died as our greatest successes. Still, in 2005, right? So we just hadn't moved on as a community. And Elia Bazani's, is Elia here somewhere? And a few other people set up Silicon Beach forums, which you should join if you are not on Silicon Beach forums. It is a bit random these days because there's thousands of people on it, but it's still a great place to go to look for work, to post jobs, to seek pointers. And all we're trying to do in everything I've done and today is to basically just to give you a snapshot of what you can do and the amount of potential and the opportunity we have. So we sold the conference to Matt and started this thing called the Start Society, which is our first product is called iCentral. It's a co-working space down at Sussex Street, 234 Sussex Street. Been going for 8 months, 130 startups, and 16% have raised funding or been accepted into an accelerator or outgrown us. So we think we're doing something good. Before that, obviously there was the Rockstars Fishburners. Has everyone heard of Fishburners, by the way? Yeah, it's like a first child for me. It's a fantastic community. They're hyper connected down there. Even if you don't, really need to get into a co-working space or whatever, go and visit them. And there's been a string of other things happening. So I suppose the key point is that we now have an ecosystem, and today is about like a little State of the Union, update. Where am I pointing this? Up the back? Does anyone know? Down here, maybe? Hey. Oh, good. They gave me the wrong slide pack. So this slide was supposed to be a chart. So. Andrew Hyde was up earlier from Startup Weekend, and Andrew, as he told you, is based in Boulder, Colorado, with 100,000 people. Sydney's a bit more complicated because if you include our satellite cities, we're probably on the way to 10 million. And he was saying that he hates the term unicorn. And I think it's a silly term as well. And then just to recap for everyone, it means a privately held tech startup worth $1 billion or more, right? And the reason it was called a unicorn is they're rare and hardly anyone's ever seen them. It's a much discussed term because it's a distraction from the main game of building a startup. And the other thing I agree with Andrew on is that taking money is not the goal, right? Building a great business, building a great product, making the type of impact that you want to make, wealth creation or social impact or something else, that is the goal. So in some ways, unicorns raising money is a distraction. So putting all that aside for a minute, the reality is the media love it. The reality is it's one of the very few rulers we have as an economy and as an ecosystem globally. And for something that was rare, they're now accelerating, okay? So they are now accelerating. 23 new unicorns this quarter. The growth in the cumulative value of unicorns, the 1 billion plus in startups in last quarter, not current last measured quarter, but the previous one, which is the April-June, was 58 billion US. Now, that's half of CommBank. So CommBank did it in 90 years. The unicorns did it in 90 days. That's how big the opportunity you've all got, and it's more about whether you grab it or not. If you want to read more about that, just Google Pete Cooper, The Industry is in Flames, and there's a long article about it. It's probably a little bit on the tedious side. The idea is was to show you that graphically, because the progression over time, if you imagine a time chart, is increasingly cool brands being created increasingly faster. And the significance of that is that it's going to change our industry, not just in terms of the value we create, but how fast we create, because it's going to draw in talent to the industry that wasn't being drawn in there before. If you say to a young teenage girl like my daughter, would you like to go and be a geek and be a programmer or build a tech startup, they'd probably go, oh, not cool, you know. But you start talking about Uber, you start talking about the amazing marketplaces, you start talking about the true new economy and the sharing economy-based businesses. It's incredible the impact they're having globally. How many cities is in Uber now? Do you know? Last time I looked, it was like 100, but their rollout rate is incredible. One of the accelerators that I'm a big advocate of, that's called Founder Institute. Has everyone heard of the Founder Institute? Yeah, a few. Who's been to the Founder Institute? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. So those people, just put their hand up again. So just make a point of seeking them out after the conference and just say hi and find out about it. But they're launching, this is one of the accelerators in our industry. Founder Institute globally, fi.co, is launching a new city every 10 days. That's like Uber-esque type rate, but they're an accelerator. So they're accelerating an accelerating industry. They're going to have a magnifying effect, so that by the end of 2016, their cohort will be generating, their engine will be generating 4,500 qualified entrepreneurs and startups, not just entrepreneurs, and startups a year, which is probably larger than the Australian ecosystem of startups today. So it's kind of scary just how big it is. The reason this state of the start is important is that we actually need a balanced ecosystem too. So there's a whole bunch of research now that you would have seen people like Malcolm Turnbull and Mike Baird quoting that talk about density and connectedness. So there's research now that clearly demonstrates, and this is not debatable, that if you're a connected entrepreneur, you will generate more value, you will have better access to resources, your business will be more resilient, and you'll have more likely to have the ability to pivot, and you will personally suffer less of the downside of the stresses of entrepreneurship, including mental illness and stress, by having that support around you. And so like-minded souls suffering together is part of that, funnily enough. But there's a lot of optimism and just generally having a balance and having access to, you know, who needs, anyone need a good Android programmer at the moment? Seriously, like who needs an Android developer in their startup? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there's about 5 needed at the Start Society as well. So, it's just a great example, right? They're genuine, they have these needs. Who's heard of React Native? Okay, cool. And who would like to use it for building their mobile? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, about 15. So React Native is a really cool framework. Started out was React, and now is being, it's quite early days, but it was backed by Facebook and it's going to be open source. And there was another point Andrew made, that the world is open source. Unfortunately, the world is not open source. Australia's big enough to be diverse, and we know this, but the power of open source is obviously gradually rolling out, and it's one of the sort of technical drivers of opportunity in the industry. That between Amazon Web Services giving everyone at the Start Society $5,000 worth of credits, or fish burners, whatever, $5,000 worth of credits for the best cloud products that are getting cheaper by the month, they're innovating by the week. It's just unprecedented in how much you can get access to. It's more about how to use it, which comes back to connectedness. So if you're well advised and you're learning from people, and you're more connected, then you're going to use it well. We also have a whole bunch of great role models now, which we didn't have before, and I'm just delighted about people like Matt and his team being successful. But obviously Atlassian, Campaign Monitor, Canva, these are great Australian role models, and unfortunately some of them are leaving overseas as well. So who's heard of a startup in Australia leaving to go overseas recently? Yeah, you should all be putting your hand up for that, or you're not reading the papers. We won't talk about politics. I think we'll move on that one. How big is this ecosystem? Look, they just cut 5 minutes off my speech as I was walking out on stage, so I won't spend too much time on it. But I would just say, as a key message for this stage of the proceedings, listen carefully to the data that you're getting, and then question it. and ask the motives of the people behind it saying it. So different industry bodies are reporting our ecosystem as being somewhere between 1,500 and 5,000 startups. I think the number's slightly larger. It probably doesn't matter too much other than the fact that Sydney is the focal point at the moment, and we need to build the density here. So, has anyone heard about the debate from Mike Cannon-Brookes about, where is the centre of the ecosystem? Yeah. Look, I don't think it matters in a lot of ways other than the fact that we need to have some core hub. If you're not in Sydney and you're a startup, get over it and just get connected here. You don't have to move here, but get connected here, and there's plenty of ways you can do that. If you go to the startsociety.com/ecosystem, there is a list of lists that can map you out to investors, incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, other startups, sliced by vertical, so health, finance, all sorts of stuff. There's also a debate about should the government be building a new hub, and has anyone been down to the Australian Technology Park and the Innovation Centre there? Yeah, great. It's awesome. It's fantastic. It's got character as a railway yard. It's taken about 10 years to get the momentum it's got now. Supported by the 4 universities. Hamish Hawthorne runs this thing called the Australian Technology Park Innovation Centre, which is punching well. StartMate Accelerator is based there. StartMate's an Australian grown accelerator, if you haven't heard of it, and it's been recognised by 2 or 3 of the top industry commentators globally as being top 5 in the world. So StartMate is worth you keeping an eye on. Muru D is another accelerator that overlaps, and they've got plenty of shared contacts and mentors, and they're wholly funded by Telstra. They've just announced that they're doubling, 50% increase in their funding and greater external funding to $200,000 for startups through Muru D. There's no shortage of places to go to, and ATP is one of the iconic places. Unfortunately, though, it's not going to be ready if they do redevelop it until 2020. And in the meantime, Barangaroo's coming online. A lot of the companies are going to move out, particularly the finance companies are going to move out of the CBD to Barangaroo. And that's going to be happening in 2016-17. So I would suggest to you to think seriously about clubbing together with a few friends, or checking out a co-working space, or finding out whether you're a specialist group of developers or designers or business people, the hackers, hipsters and hustlers, to try and get them together and seriously consider doing that, wherever it is. No, they've changed it on me. Oh, it's really, really winning today. So there's an opportunity with the city. I'll come back to that. And the final one is Mike Baird's announcement. And Mike announced that we've got a big bundle of land. No one had noticed, 100 hectares on the western edge of the city on the harbour, called White Bay. There's a power station there. They recently put a new roof on it. I thought we might just go down to Bunnings and buy a couple of thousand tables and jack into the internet that's there in the customs border protection area, and maybe set up a pirate network of fibre. But at some point NBN will do it properly, and it looks like Mike Baird wants to do it really properly and build a base for a whole bunch of new multinational corporations and maybe multinational startups. So that's great, but that's probably going to be 2022. So going back to the current scenario of Barangaroo opening, startups should be taking the city. I really think if you want to change culture in our country and genuinely see people talking about you at their barbecues and how you are going to be the next logical place for their children to go and work, and how Australia is innovating and how Australia is exporting product around the world, and how Australia is leading and how Australia is using our unique assets like diversity, we need to grab our biggest city and move into the CBD, take over the Central Business District and own the puppy. Sound all right? There's precedence for this, right? Medical research has done it around Melbourne. There's about 10,000 clustered around the outside of Melbourne. Mostly the top-down programs do work eventually, but they take a long time. What does happen is bottom-up programs. So we opt in with our feet, we vote with our wallets, we make an intelligent choice to connect through the ecosystem groups in the community, and we find like-minded souls and we go and find out great talent, negotiate hard, and get a place in the city. And it will just change us. It will change us because people will be tripping over us at every coffee shop. Be like One Market. Has anyone been to One Market in San Francisco? There's just so many people go there. Or there used to be like one decent hipster coffee shop on Harris Street near Fishburners, and now there's like 5 or 6. You genuinely change the industry by becoming closer to the customers and closer to the resources. You change the attitude of the whole, the culture of the economy, and we can no longer be ignored. So when we go down to individual verticals and start saying, okay, let's get it easier to do a national e-health system, let's get it easier to get a fintech hub, let's have a great travel tech conference, but more than a conference, a whole community ongoing. We have a policy hack or a social impact startup weekend. All these things are happening right now, food hack, fash hack, and I've taken great pride in being involved in the very early ones of these. Find your vertical, find your like-minded soul, and if there isn't one, just find one other person and then start researching it. I'm happy to reach out through the Start Society. We're here to do exactly that, and we have web pages on all the verticals. So if you want to get listed so other people can find you and you can find other people in your vertical, that's what we're here for. It's all run by volunteers. We're here solely to help. And there's even a policy database that's split by level of government and by portfolio. Did I do that right? Yeah, level of government and portfolio. So you can get an entrepreneur's vote on the policy rather than being influenced by, some multinational funded lobby group. There's a very simple 3-step thing, and that is keep finding smaller niches. So I'll give you one example. There's a guy, Stephen Wallace, who's a canny Scot, relatively good technically, but probably not super hyper connected in a few areas. And he just chose to focus on Docker, Puppet, Chef, Ansible, and a few technology sets around containerization. For those of you that aren't into that stuff, it's probably boring. But he managed to find 3,000 like-minded souls, and it's now the biggest group of meetups, specialist groups in the Southern Hemisphere, and they're probably 1 degree of separation from every bit of major infrastructure in Australia. And he did it one person. And the proceeds from that work are all donated to a personal social impact cause that he cares about. So the enablers, there's so many enablers, and I mentioned StartMate before, and Founder Institute, and Muru-D, Fishburners. There's two enduring messages I want to leave with you on this point. When people come to, I'm over time, I really need to move. When people come to the Start Society, they say, oh no, mentoring's not that important. Once you've done a startup and you've failed, or you've left it another year or so, most of them come back and say, actually, mentoring is actually in my top 3, top 5, and many it's top 1. And as a few of the other speakers have said today, it's now just about the relevance of the mentor and your ability to listen to conflicting information and find one that's relevant to you. So I'm going to skip on because they're going to kick me off. And I'd like to just spend 1 minute on opportunities. Why do we have an Assistant Minister for Innovation now? Why do we have a change of leadership at the Prime Minister level? Why do we have a new name for the Department of Industry, which includes innovation and science? It's because of us, and they really want to hear from us. Unfortunately, there's 7 industry bodies and they're confused. So if you want to help, please get in contact with the Start Society, or write an opinion piece that's thoughtful, not a rant. Get it published. LinkedIn's amazing. Doesn't matter where you do it. And at the moment, we are in a unique situation. We might get a lot of things through in this next budget, and we might get them in the next budget as well, federally. So the bigger the idea, the bigger the cut through, the more unique your perspective, the better. I think we could possibly get away with a 10-fold improvement in our tax situation in terms of complexity. There's that much appetite. There's $2 billion in super funds, of which, as far as I know, it's less than 200 million currently earmarked for startups. And sorry, did I say that right? 2 trillion in super funds. 2 trillion in super funds and only 200 million in startups, and that's reserved for later stage. Australia's 3rd or 4th, depending on what you measure, in the world in funds management now, and the world looks to us for assets. But our own super funds are not investing in startups. That's about to change, and we're also advocating for a startup stock exchange. So predictions-wise, the other things to keep an eye out for is, don't forget, Asia is not just China. Indonesia's got 100 million people online, and by 2020, nearly half of them are going to be under 30. So while the rest of the world's getting older, including Australia, some of these countries are getting younger. I spoke to one lady the other day, and they've got 5,000 mobile developers in Vietnam in one company. You can access those people. And I need to go because they're going to kick me off. So please start, get connected, go through the community, work really hard at doing that. Learn, don't just learn from books and YouTube and stuff. Peer learning, you'll be amazed. The deeper your connections will be, the better quality you're learning, and you get inside the cycle time. You can't read a book on the latest Amazon products because they haven't been written yet. So that's it for me. I'll wrap it up. I'm particularly proud of this community, and I'm going to quietly take a back seat now for the rest of my career. So this is sort of like an unofficial see you later. I'll just be spending more time on policy. You'll never have to suffer through a meandering conversation. But I'd like to run an experiment. You know that bogan rugby thing where everyone says Aussie, oi, Aussie, oi, Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. So I thought we might rename that and try and get it as a thing. Do you want to try it? Aussie! Aussie! Aussie, Aussie, Aussie! See you later.